For Lesson 9, we are going to be covering CSS3. And there are some pages in your book that you are going to want to read through. And then you are going to go through the lecture demo. The CSS3 is constantly expanding. So there's a lot more information in the lecture demo than there is in the book. And basically, I just take you through the different categories of CSS3. And we kind of start out by saying that anything that's new to CSS3 may not be recognized by all of the web browsers. And there is a website that you can go to check to see if the CSS3 that you're using is recognized by all the mobile devices and the browsers. If it's not recognized, then you just have to prefix commands with either WebKit, and that's for basically all mobile, Safari and Chrome. Firefox, you have to prefix everything with Moz. IE, it's MS. Opera, it's O. So most of the things that we are going to be talking about don't require a prefix. And what happens as updates are made to the language and to the browsers, things are incorporated in, and then you don't need the prefix anymore. So it's not like you have to change the code if you put the prefix in. Basically, the browser just ignores it if it recognizes the code. Most of the things that we're going to look at do not require the prefix. But in the future, if you are looking into using some new CSS commands and you see those little codes in front of the CSS that you want to use, I want you to understand what they mean. So as we go through here, if it is something we've talked about before, you'll see that I have review. Otherwise, it is new information. And there are links for you to try different things out. Something that is fairly new and actually pretty cool is something that you can do to images. So as we kind of go through here, you'll see there's all sorts of things with text. And a lot of these things are interactive. So anytime possible, I have incorporated that into here. We get down to filters. So this is actually pretty cool because it lets you change the way an image looks without going into an image editor. So you can actually take an image like this, and this is a photo I took of Grand Traverse Bay, and you can change it to grayscale or sepia. You can add a blur to it. You can do more than one thing. So I added some brightness and I basically desaturated this. 100% is fully saturated, so I kind of made it look washed out. So you guys can play with these and see how they work. I've got interactive sliders, and you can really only do one at a time. They're not cumulative, but down here at the bottom, it is showing you what the different settings do to the image. So you no longer have to go into an image editor for this. And that is actually pretty cool. So you can desaturate or you can oversaturate. So I'm very into art and photography, so I think this is like really cool. Okay, here you can change the colors. So anyway, this is in here for you guys to play with just so you can get a feel for what they do. And then we get down into 2D and 3D transformations. And so I have basically the different CSS code. And again, I do try to have interactive sliders. So this is rotating. But if you change the transformation point, all objects have a point at which they rotate around, and transform origin lets you change the point. So if I move this and I move this, And now I rotate, you can see that I've totally changed where I'm rotating. Now, if you do this and you mess everything up, just reload the page and it goes back to normal. And then these just show you some other transform commands. And then these are all interactive examples that you can go play with. And I do encourage you guys to do that because you learn a lot by just interacting with the examples. Perspective is a 3D transformation. Perspective is kind of like if you look in the distance, how things get smaller or they get more narrow. And I do have a little interactive example. Okay, so that's what 60 looks like. Okay, so you can kind of see the difference here. And then perspective origin, again, this would be the point of view. The default is the perspective is centered on the viewer, but you can change that point of view. So 50-50 is the viewer. And so if I change this and press enter, you can see how that kind of shifts the perspective. Okay, so you can play with that as well. Transform basically can make things bigger or smaller. That's what scale does. Translate lets you move things around the screen. Rotate lets you spin it around that origin point. And I do have an example that lets you change all of them. And so you basically just have to key in values and press enter. And then you'll see things kind of move around. Z is a value for 3D. It puts something in 3D space. Okay, so again, you can play around with this. Then we have transitions. Basically, if something is going to animate, you can tell it how long the animation is going to last and what CSS you want animated. So in this little example, it looks like I have a square because I've got a width of 100 and a height of 100. And I'm going to animate this, the width, for 2 seconds. And so this is connected down here to a hover where the width increases to 300. Okay, so if you want to see that live, if I point, see how that increases, and then I point away and it decreases. So this is kind of the same type of thing. I have a square, and I am going to transform this for 2 seconds. And what transform is doing down here is it is rotating 180 degrees. So if we take a look, it rotates and it rotates back when I point away. Okay, so if you do go into these pages, you can actually see what it does, and I do think that's helpful. You can specify the duration, as I just showed you. You can also have a timing delay where it doesn't start animating right away. It also lets you have a timing function, which if you've done any animation before, this would be like ease in, it starts off slow and then it speeds up. Ease out, it starts out really fast, it ends up slow, that kind of thing. If you've never done animation before, this is more advanced, probably something that you're not going to be super interested in until you get a handle on how all of this animation works. But you can see that the item that we're going to animate has the transition. Here it has the transition timing. You can see we're animating the width And then down here on the hover is the new width setting. So transition is one way to get things to animate. CSS3 also has animations that use keyframes, which is very similar to traditional animation programs. And so the syntax for this is either from a starting position to an ending position. You animate from one point to the other, or if you want to be more precise, you can give it percentages. So as the animation is playing, it's going to start here. 25% of the way done, it does this. 50% it goes through this code. 75% it goes through this code, and so on. So here's an example of different top settings. So it's going to be moving around vertically based on the top setting. Now, if you use keyframes, you have to give the keyframe a name, okay? And then you define what your animation is, and then you actually have to apply it to an element on your page. And so here you can see we're changing the top and left settings and the background. So if we wanted to take a look at this one, okay, you can see it's moving around and changing colors because the top and the left settings are getting changed and the background. Okay, and so the keyframe here is called My Move. And then if you look above there, we have a div element, and we've defined the animation as My Move. And it's going to last 5 seconds, and it's just going to go on forever. It's infinite. Okay, so after you define the animation, you actually have to put it in an element in order for it to play. Okay, so here's another example of an animation. You can see that we have it defined in an element, and then this is what the animation does. Okay, and just like transitions, you can have a delay. You can have either a count, like you have it animate a certain number of times, or you can set it to infinite. The different easing options, where it starts slow or it ends slow, you have those with animation as well. Okay, and so this little example shows, looks like a rectangle. It's wider than it is tall. And we have the animation My Move applied. It's infinite, so it's just going to go on forever. Then we have several div IDs with animation timing set. And then you can see that we've got those IDs down here. So this linear timing is going to be applied to this one. Ease is applied to that one. Okay, and you can watch this thing live and look at another example if you want. Okay, so as you read through here, what you're going to be seeing are just different customizations that you can make to animation. The CSS user interface basically deals with enhancing what you see on your page. Box sizing is something that we are going to be using a lot because we're going to be setting our responsive pages to border box. So that helps us create more responsive and mobile friendly pages. So you will be seeing that used a lot in upcoming weeks. Resize will actually let you resize different text boxes or text frames that you see on your screen. And outline offset lets you put borders around things that do not count as part of the width. So if you remember back from the CSS box exercises where everything is a virtual box, borders are counted as part of the width of the box, but outlines are not. So there is a lot of information here in CSS3 and Lesson 9. That is by far going to take you the longest to go through. For the assignment, there's a textbook assignment and a lab assignment. The textbook assignment, I am actually giving you quite a few files, which should save you some time. And we're just going to kind of focus on what's new. So for this first little exercise, you're going to be working with this famous quote page. And it is going to look a lot different by the time you're done. You're going to kind of fancy up the boxes. You're going to actually add a tooltip so that when we point at a box, you're going to see the philosopher or the famous person who made the quote. We're going to put a little fishy in them. And you're also going to animate them so when the page displays, they're going to kind of bounce and rock. So we're going to be doing all sorts of fun stuff with that page. So several tasks involve working with famous quote. And for things that you need to add, I did try to highlight them. So hopefully that will help you out, bold-faced and highlighted. So first thing you're going to do is add that little tool tip and kind of make the boxes look good. We're going to add the little fishy, and then you're going to animate the page. After that, you're going to create a cube. Okay, and that is what it should look like when it's done. If yours does not look that way, then there is a typo somewhere. So it's not a lot to type on this one. So this is one that you guys are going to have to type. And so you're going to have to kind of look for typos because that is the only problem people have had with this. The ball animation is kind of fun. It's short, not a whole lot of typing, but basically it just creates a bouncing ball. Then you are going to be copying and pasting that song snippet file, and you are going to be animating that. So you're going to be adding several effects to that file, and the effects that you need to add are all kind of highlighted. And then once you're done, you're going to need to turn all of that in. Then you get to the lab assignment. So you're going to be adding animation to your existing pages. So the Flexbox model page from Lesson 6 and the form from Lesson 8, you're going to want to copy those into your Lesson 9 folder, and also copy any images or CSS that you have from those lesson folders into your Lesson 9 folders. And then for the flex box, you're going to rename it. And then you're basically going to add animation to make those boxes rock when you point at them. And so I have an example with rocking pages. So it's going to do something like this. Okay. And then the code that you need to create that, it's pretty simple. You're going to have to edit your CSS, and you're going to have to add keyframes with transform and rotate. Okay, so if you aren't sure of what to do, because I did give you an example, you can right click and go to view page source. You can actually go and take a look at the CSS to see how I did that. So here's my animation. Okay, and let's see. Let's boxes are here's the keyframes. So down here you can see I did a rotate 10 degrees, -10, 10 degrees. That gives it the rocking. Okay, so here's my animation. This is where I am applying it. One other thing you'll notice, and I left this in here on purpose, you can see that I have that WebKit prefix in here that I was talking about earlier. I left it in here because it does not hurt anything, and you are going to see pages with those prefixes. At one point in time, Flexbox was not recognized by mobile. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing you're going to do is animate your form. And so I have some written instructions for how you need to go about doing that. Then I also have an example. You need to actually look at this kind of quick though, because it animates right away. So if I reload, you can kind of see everything sliding into place. Part 2, you are going to practice using that resizable user interface command. And it is kind of neat. I'm giving you this page. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to make both of these boxes resizable. So I'll be able to drag and resize the text and also the graphic box. Okay, and these instructions basically tell you how to go about doing that. And then finally, you're going to add animation to your assignment page. I am not telling you what effect to add, but you either need animation keyframes or a transition effect on your assignment page. And by this point, you have done quite a bit of animation, so you can decide what you want to animate. And then, of course, you got to update all of your links. Okay, and go into the drop boxes and indicate that you are done. Lesson 9 is going to take much longer than the menu lesson. So lesson 9 is where the majority of your time this week is going to be spent. If you run into problems or have questions, make sure that you have transferred your page to the web. Send me an email, and then I can go look at it and let you know how to fix it.